Hey everyone, it's Bergeron and we're going to do some painting for absolute beginners today. And today we're going to talk about color mixing. Alright, so we're going to talk about how we get that green, a very specific green that we're looking for. We want to get this very distinct green. And so how do we go about getting that green? Or it could be, how do we go about getting that orange that we're looking for, or maybe a specific purple. So today we're going to concentrate on just getting a specific green, and I'm going to show you how to work from very light yellow all the way through to a dark green. Or it could be that you're looking for a teal. So we're going to take our number 5 watercolor brush. This is a round brush, and we're going to mix up a whole bunch of yellow. All right, quite a bit of yellow. And then I'm going to rinse my brush off, and I'm going to mix up a whole bunch of blue. So if you remember from previous videos, the way that we get the way that we get green is by mixing our yellow and our blue, and that gets us green. All right. So I'm going to show you how to figure out which green it is that you're looking for. And the way that we do that is not just by random trial and error. We actually go through a process. So I'm going to take this brush and I'm going to take a lot of the water off of it, and I'm going to transport this yellow into this center well, right? These are called wells, right? This is a well. A well is a place that we store liquid. All right. So I'm going to put all this yellow, squeeze my brush out, put all this yellow into here. All right. You see, it's quite a bit of yellow. All right. So this brush that's in the yellow is going to be my brush that, actually I'm going to use a smaller brush because we're going to do this very incrementally. So we're going to use these two brushes. The blue brush I'm going to use to put the mark on the page, and the brown brush I'm going to use to move the blue from the well into the yellow. All right, so you'll see what I mean. So the first mark I'm going to put on the page, the first mark is just going to be the yellow mark. All right, very yellow. I'm going to take this brush, I'm going to pick up some blue, I'm going to put it into my yellow. That didn't move any. I'm going to put my blue into my yellow and give it a mix, and you'll see it's still pretty yellow. I'm just going to keep repeating that process. All right? And you'll see how this has started to change a little bit already. I'm only on, I'm on like number 7, and it's already starting to turn green. So you're just going to keep doing this and keep doing it, moving a little bit of paint over at a time, stirring it up with the blue brush, move the blue over, stir it up with the paintbrush, move the blue over, stir it up with the paintbrush, and just keep doing that. All right. So I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm going to speed up the video a little bit so you don't have to watch me do this and be bored out of your mind. All right, so eventually you're going to get to a point where it's going to look like it's not changing, and it probably isn't changing very quickly at some point. And then you'll get to a point where it'll just sort of all start to change over fairly quickly to a much darker green, or you might even say to a teal color, almost to a blue. So at some point in here, you'll see we've gone to a light green, and then the green gets darker and darker and darker until we're sort of in a forest kind of a green, and then it turns into this teal kind of a color, and then eventually it starts to flip over to blue. So what happens here is the yellow gets a little bit of blue into it and it turns green, and then it gets more and more blue into it, flips over to this teal color. So we're at some kind of an equilibrium along here at some point where there's an equal amount of green and an equal amount of blue. And then it starts to get bluer and bluer and bluer, and eventually it flips over to this color. All right. So what this tells you is how many equal amounts of blue that you had to add to yellow to get a specific color. All right. So I just counted, and there's 58 different little color marks on here. So it gives you some kind of an idea of how much blue do I have to add to yellow to get a specific color. All right. So there's lots of times where I might go through and make up a whole batch of this and add that to that very gradually until I get that specific color. And you'll see I have a substantial amount of paint on here, right? There's a substantial amount of green on here and a substantial amount of blue on here, right? To get to a particular color. So I used up all the yellow, I put it into this well, and then I added one little brush full of blue at a time to the yellow to get through all of these colors. Now you can do the same thing with orange, you can do the same thing with purple. I would suggest that you always start with, if you're gonna add blue to yellow to make green, I would suggest that you start with the yellow and add the blue to it. And if you're going to make orange, I would suggest also that you start with the yellow and add red to it. It's very, very easy to quickly overcome the yellow, but it's very, very difficult to turn the red into orange. In other words, if you went backwards on this, it becomes very, very difficult, and you might get up to 100 steps before you see the red start to turn orange. All right. That's just from experience that I know that. I have tried to do it the other way, and it's very, very difficult. All right, so I can give you a whole bunch of reasons why you need to know how to do this and why you need to practice this, but I think it should be pretty evident that we don't always have the exact color in our palette that we want. All right, so sometimes we have to make the color that we want. And this is painting for absolute beginners, so I want you to practice all of these different things. I want you to go and practice making orange. I want you to practice making purple, practice making green, and just do it like this. It doesn't have to be very difficult, and just do a whole bunch of them at a time. And you know, I've done this many, many times. Here's another one that I've done. I would say that the more of this that you do, the better you're going to get at color mixing, and the more you're going to understand about your paint and your palettes. Okay, so go give it a shot. Try it with all the different colors and see what you come up with. So in painting, very often we'll have this green in our palette. All right, so I have this green in my palette. I took it out of this well and I put it in here. All right, and I stirred this around, and this is not the color I'm looking for. All right, so this is a color that I have in my palette, but I want this to be darker. Well, somebody's going to say, well, why don't you just add, just go ahead and add some black to it and you'll make that darker. Well, that would make it very, very dark, but that's not what I'm really going for. I want to see if I can get a more concentrated color than this. So this is fairly watery. As you can see right here that I put on the page, it's fairly watery. So I'm going to go and pick up some more of my green, and I'm just going to pick it up on the brush. I'm not going to add any more water to this, just that little brush full, and I'm going to put this into here. So what I really did was I picked up more pigment and put more pigment into the same amount of water. All right, so this is virtually the same amount of water as we had before, but now we have more pigment in it. And so you see when I put a line down beside this, it's going to be substantially darker. Right? What if I go, I'm not going to add any more water to this. I'm going to use this water, this paint, and And I'm going to pick up some more pigment and mix that into this. What's that going to look like on this page now? It's even thicker, right? And you can keep doing that. You can just keep picking up more and more pigment, putting more and more pigment into this wash. All right? Just keep going, putting more and more pigment into it until you see it gets very, very dark. But maybe this is going to be about as thick as I can make that wash. So my other option is go and pick up a little bit of blue that I already had there and add that into this wash. Now that should make this substantially darker, all right? So you can see that's got quite a bit of blue tint to it. Put a little bit more on here. And I'm gonna pick up a substantial amount of more blue. You'll see that makes it darker, and pick up a little bit more blue, and that's going to make it darker even more. All right. So the answer isn't always that I have to make a green. Sometimes I have a green and I just need to add some of my darker blue pigment to it to make it even darker and darker yet. All right. So don't worry about always about, mixing up the color. Sometimes you can start with the color that you have and add blue to it. Okay, so this has been Rod Bergeron for Painting for Absolute Beginners. And if you picked up a tip or a trick, I hope you click liked. And if you don't currently subscribe to my channel, please consider subscribing to my channel and get all the upcoming videos that I'm going to do. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.